Peace. We all want it for ourselves and for our families, but it can be such a struggle. Today's guest, Jennifer Smarsh, has wonderful insights on some of the dragons we need to slay. So stick around for 8 ways to win the battle for peace in your homeschool.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and Jennifer Smarsh is back today to give us 8 ways to win the battle for peace in your homeschool. Jennifer Smarsh has been married to Dave for 31 years and has 5 daughters. 3 of her adult children are married, and there are 2 grandchildren with 2 more on the way, praise God. She has been homeschooling since 1998 with some experience with public, Catholic, and online charter schooling as well, and she is currently homeschooling her youngest, who is 12. Jennifer has served in various leadership roles within homeschool groups and communities over the years, and for 3 years was a consultant for Mother of Divine Grace School, which is based in Ojai, California. Jennifer is passionate about helping other homeschoolers, especially those just starting out, and we know you're out there and we love you. You can reach Jennifer Smarsh at her email, which is in the show notes. That's byhisgracejs@gmail.com. We also have her Facebook link, which is jen.smarsh, Smarsh. All right, Jen, it's so good to see you again.
It's so good to see you, Lisa. Thank you for having me back. It's always a gift to be with you.
That's exactly how I feel too, Jen. I just love to see you. I find that, you give such thought and care to others, and it really shows. You've been battling the so-called dragons for a long time. Now, you give us the whole title, because you give a talk for homeschoolers, and I think the super cool title is worth saying out loud. Would you mind what is the name?
Version.
The whole name of this presentation.
The long version.
Yeah.
The long version is Finding Peace in Homeschooling by Slaying the Dragons, Those Thieves Which Steal Our Peace. Or in short, Finding Peace in Homeschooling.
Yes, those thieves that steal our peace. And they're all around us, right? We know this. It's a spiritual landscape that we're in, but we are so mightily armed in the Lord. And knowing that and recognizing what these little skirmishes look like helps us to really, we know the landscape. We know that we're going to be okay, even though it's a fight. But that is a fantastic title. And I really think that this is a great start. Just to call, name them and kind of look at what you do. So let's go through them, Jen. Why don't you guide the process? Start us off. Would you please just tell us what the 8, dragons are?
Sure.
What those battlefields kind of are, how we can identify them, and then just go ahead and we'll talk about them.
Okay, sounds good. So the first one is comparison. The second is, am I doing enough? Then we have not recognizing the root struggles, and that could be anything from learning issues to readiness issues. Opinions of family and friends is number 4. Being too busy is number 5. 6 is the lack of time to prepare and plan. 7 is lack of breaks. And 8 is the big question, do I have what it takes? So those are those in a nutshell. And I always like to give a little disclaimer that when I share these things, I don't want to give the false impression that we have arrived at some perfect place of peace in our homeschooling, and in our family. We are not moving through our day swimmingly with the children sitting there doing their work so perfectly and, obedient, and everything's just wonderful, just like in our faith walk, we aren't going to fully arrive to perfection until we're in heaven, right? It's no different in homeschooling. So 25 years in, I'm still seeking peace, still, many things have come along and we've struggled through and battled through. And I really do feel peace in those places, but you never get to the end of that journey, at least not while we're still homeschooling our children. Right.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And the first thing is the most important is that Jesus is the source. God is our source. And we have to stay close to him. We have to lean on him and count on his grace. And he's the source of all of it. And we're doing this for him, right? We're raising the children for his kingdom. And it's a battlefield, just like, the family is under attack, as we've discussed. And And so we are in that battlefield in our homeschooling journey as well, because while we're raising these children for his kingdom, the enemy doesn't like that. And so there will be all kinds of things thrown at us, those flaming arrows, right? And so it's just important to remember that constant prayer, and pray without ceasing, and cling to him and seek his grace. But anyhow, to understand how to combat them, we need to call out what those things are. So as I said, number one is comparison. And comparison is like a cancer. It's been called one of the 5 emotional cancers, right? It'll eat us up. It saps our energy. It completely discourages and defeats us. And I think that women in particular are really prone to the struggle with comparison, and social media nowadays makes that even worse. But even just in our circle with other homeschool friends, it's really hard to not compare what we're doing to what our friends are doing. And, we compare to our friends, we compare to what the schools are doing, and so on and so forth. And it's just something we need to take the time to know who we are in him and be confident in that, so that we won't waste the time comparing ourselves to others. And as I think you would probably agree, that's an ongoing battle, I think, for women in general.
Yeah. And may I just say too, I learned when I was an actress a million years ago, I had a teacher that said compare equals despair. Because there's
Absolutely.
always this tension in comparisons, whether you're trying to push someone down lower than you, or you're elevating them and pushing yourself down. It's not a natural place to be. It's a place of great tension and exhaustion.
That is absolutely true. I completely agree with that. And then we waste so much time trying to do things just to be like somebody else. And then we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? So that's really true. It is like complete despair, right? When we do that.
Yeah. And that's our enemy's greatest tool. He loves despair. So we want to just always be people of hope, that no matter how discombobulated, awkward, we don't think we have the right talents. God gave us the talents, and he wants us to find out what they are and live in them, be obedient to his design, and find out what our unique family is meant to look like day to day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. 100%. 100%. So the next one is, am I doing enough? And this falls under the same category of comparison, but it's usually, it's what I have found is it's comparing to the schools. Homeschoolers tend to compare what their students are doing, what their children are doing, to what the schools are doing. And so we're filled with these intrusive thoughts sometimes of, goodness, in school, they're reading by age 6 fluently, and by 7, they know their multiplication tables. And, so then we just feel despair again, because we don't think that we can do it. We don't believe that we're enough for our own children, by the way. And so we find ourselves panicking with those intrusive thoughts. And brick and mortars are different. We pulled our children out of school, or chose not to put them in school, because we wanted something different. So then why are we going to use that as a way to measure how our children are doing and measure their successes based on what the schools are doing, when we didn't even want that in the first place? I kind of look at that as a box that the children were in, and it's not a one size fits all in brick and mortar. And that's why we moved our children out usually, or again, have decided before we even put them in to not put them in that box. So we shouldn't use that as a tool, a measuring tool. We're not teaching our children to be computers, to just spit out information. And, my experience with the public schools was that, when my oldest 2 were in public school for a while, and they would come home and they would tell me, they were really anxious about these standardized tests, and all year long they're preparing for these standardized tests, and everything is teaching to the test. And I remember they came home and said to me, we have to do well because our teacher's job depends on it. And that was a huge red flag to me. And I'm thinking, you're not in school to learn so that your teacher can get a good grade, so that was a red flag. But at that time, we still kept them in school. We didn't have the support or we just didn't feel called, I guess, completely to pull them out. So we did the best that we could with that. But then later on, when I had my 3rd daughter at home doing the charter school, that was an online school. So she was at home with me, but it was a public charter school. So she was receiving a public education. And so I was able to witness it for myself. Every single class that she was in, the teachers were saying things like, on the test, it will look like this. When you are taking your test, it will be such and such. And so that didn't feel right to me because I felt like she wasn't learning anything just for the sake of learning. And the education of our children was not for their sake and for their benefit. It was for the benefit of the schools and the teachers to get a good grade. And I walked in one day and she was on a class, and I looked and I see next to her a piece of paper and a pencil, and she has drawn an entire page worth of sad and angry faces. I could cry thinking about it.
Ooh,
And I said,
yeah.
enough is enough. We're finished. So that was when we made the switch to traditional homeschooling, and we haven't turned back since. But that was not for her benefit, what they were teaching her. She was not learning, she was just stressed out and, so.
Yeah. Can I just comment on that? I thank you so much for validating your daughter, because a factory education system like that, some kids thrive in it. Let's just acknowledge that. Some people even put their kids, some kids in school and the others are homeschooled. It's all good. You and your family figure that out for yourselves. But for some kids, they are telling us, and if we don't validate what, we don't have to validate their every whim, but when something is that important and we validate them, then they know to trust their own instincts about what's a danger to them. They understand that those bad feelings they're getting, that something's wrong, that mom and dad take it seriously. We can't always, like, you may have a working single mom or somebody who doesn't have a choice. God bless you. It's a hard road. But I just want to validate you as a mom for seeing that and knowing what it was, for really responding to it and saying, you know what, this is not for the good of my child. I'm going to do something different.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it just became very clear, and all those things that my older two had dealt with, and this just kind of just became a really clear picture that the education that they were receiving, at least in the schools we had them in, it wasn't for their benefit. And, children inherently want to learn. You watch a toddler and what are they doing? They're just exploring their world. Children want to learn. They're like sponges, So they really do want to learn. And if we have them at home, they have that freedom to do that. But anyhow, so the question of, am I doing enough? You're doing far more at home, I would venture to say, than what they would be receiving in many of the schools. I know there are good schools out there, so I don't want to, completely dismiss the value of a good school and teachers that are really doing a good job to make sure children are educated. But for those who have struggled in school and pulled their children out because they're not happy with their schools, I just want to encourage that you're doing plenty. You're doing enough, and there are different seasons too. There are different seasons when a baby is born, when, there's a death in the family or a move. We need to be able to give ourselves the grace to be gentle enough with ourselves to just kind of coast for a while and realize that that's okay. It's just, sometimes we just need to breathe a little bit. And, when my father had died, I 2 months of just telling my children, let's just do math and reading today. Just the bare minimum. Well, we lived at an area where I had to put a portfolio together at the end of the year. I had to see an evaluator and turn that into the state. And I was nervous at the end of the year to put that portfolio together. I thought, well, I spent 2 months on the couch grieving the loss of my father. I don't think we've done enough. And I will tell you, we did far more than I even could have imagined that we had done. So, sometimes it's good to just pause and look at what you have done, even if you don't have to turn in a portfolio, kind of just look at what you've done in a year, just look back and realize you're doing a lot. And education is, happening all the time anyway, as we've discussed in the past. Education is always happening in our lives. So you're doing enough.
I was talking to Maureen Whitman the other day, and she tells moms, just write down everything your children read.
Right.
And she said, you're not going to even believe how long that list is, because high school kids might be told that every month they have to read a book during their senior year or something, and they're all up in arms because it's too much. But our kids are reading a book a week. Some of them are reading more than that. And so it really adds it up. That's a lot of education. That's a lot of great training.
It is. It is. And whether they're doing the reading themselves or you're doing it with them or they're listening to an audiobook, and it still counts as reading, and so they're learning, they're absorbing so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the next one is not recognizing the root struggles, number 3. The question for this one is, do you feel like you have to put your battle gear on every day? Do you feel like you dread the day and you just want to cry? You wake up and you think, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And, there may be the 3 key things I first think of are, is it a readiness issue? Is your child ready for what you're teaching them? They just might not be, and that's okay. And that's the beauty of homeschooling. We can pause, we can coast for a while. I always encourage moms to move laterally in school if they're not ready to move ahead, and just dig deeper and let them learn more about what they've already learned, and coast for a while and then move them along at their pace. And that's such a gift in homeschooling. Equally, if you have an overachiever, you can just keep them moving, so it's a gift either way. But anyhow, back to, if there's a possible issue with readiness, that's a fairly easy fix. You just breathe, pause, spend some more time with them. Sometimes there might be a learning issue and you need some outside help with that. And, we've experienced that from, a child who was struggling to read to another child who needed vision therapy. And the vision therapy was a whole family ordeal. We changed our eating style. We changed, we took her to therapy once a week and did exercises at home 5 days a week. And that went on for about 4 months, the therapy. And so, sometimes you need some help like that. And I will say that the success in that, when you find that thing, even if it's a child who just can't read well, and then they finally get it, or with us with the vision therapy, you come to a place where you find what I call a sweet spot or an oasis. After years of turmoil or months of turmoil, however long it may be before you figure out what that learning issue is, you then have this oasis and you both just enjoy school together. You enjoy that time, and it's beautiful memories are made at that point. Once you overcome those obstacles and find out what those issues are, it's such a beautiful place. And that is true success, in my opinion. Not what do they know? What can they spit out on a test? You just get to a place where you just grow and build memories and just enjoy the time together. And I just always call those moments our oasis moments or our sweet spot, and we've had some of our favorite times together. Like, we've actually enjoyed homeschooling. And, so yeah, a readiness issue, possibly a learning issue, but also sometimes you just don't have the right curriculum. And I recommend Kathy Duffy's book, 100 top, I believe now it's 103 top picks for curriculum. And in this book, she has a survey, and it's really helpful to fill that survey out because you narrow down the type of educator you are, what your preference is for the style of education, and what type of learner your student is. And so, you could really change your whole schooling perspective if you can zone in on that. I had one, Kathy, she labels the children as, or not, I shouldn't say label, but she has Wiggly Wanda, Competent Carl, Perfect Paula, and Sociable Sue. And so I have a couple of kids who fall into that. And actually, they're really straddling Sociable Sue and Wiggly Wanda. And so, the poor child who's the Wiggly Wanda, I'm doing all this book work with her. Well, we had such freedom when I realized she doesn't do textbooks. She's not Perfect Paula or Competent Carl. She is needing hands-on activities. And, when we started that, our life changed. So zoning in on the style of learning as well as your style of teaching is really key to finding some peace. Things just go better when you can do that.
And I feel like that communicates so much to our children, because when you're in your own teaching style that feels really good for you and you're energized and you're confident because it suits you, you're communicating something very different from, I'm not good enough, I have to do it someone else's way. And what are your kids learning from that? They're going to pick up on our normal insecurities anyway. There's nothing, like you said, this isn't heaven. It ain't going to be perfect. Right. But if we stack the deck in our favor by kind of honoring God's design. How am I made to operate as a home educator? And how are my children meant to receive and process information? It's so good. Thank you so much for that, Jen. It's a great distinction.
Helpful. It's so helpful. And the mom has a lot to do with it. You are the educator. So if there's something you just dread or hate, your child's not going to be enthusiastic about it if you aren't. They're going to pick up on it. And so you need to kind of find what works for you almost as much, if not more, than what's working for your child. There needs to be some balance in that, because if you're enthusiastic, they will want to learn more and they'll get excited about it too. So
yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I'm just going to do a quick little spontaneous commercial. It's one of the reasons that Homeschool Connections has been so successful, because we're not going to love everything. And then we're not going to love all the things our kids love. And sometimes we have to outsource, whether it's at the co-op or a mom who exchanges like peer, like you tutor my kid in math, I'll tutor your kid in history, or whatever that might be, because we have things that we love to teach and we can kind of broaden, we can kind of shower our bounty on others, essentially. But yeah, so good. Yes, recognizing what's not in your wheelhouse, it's okay. We can make it work.
Right. Exactly. So when you have the freedom to find out how your child learns and how you work as a teacher, peace will come at that point too. So
good.
All right. So moving on to number 4, the opinion of family and friends. And this is a real thief of peace, because we're barraged with opinions. It could be anyone from someone who works at the grocery store who's questioning why you homeschool your children, making you feel weird, neighbors, family members, and even your spouse. My husband and I, for a long time, we really, he's the one, interestingly, who brought up homeschooling to me. But then when we were doing it, he just was very nervous. Fathers get very nervous about, what if we don't check all those boxes? How will they graduate? What do other people think? They might be getting pressure from people at work and putting those thoughts in their minds. They might not be confident. And so, he supported me 100% in the homeschooling. However, when there would be an issue, the first response, and I've heard this with many of the people that I've consulted with, is the father says, should we put them back in school? And obviously, honestly, the issue of a learning issue or something, school isn't going to be the answer. They're going to get lost in the mix there. And so the best place for them is at home, where you can find reliable help, to get you on the right path. But fathers really do get concerned, and obviously they have a say in their children's education. So it's a matter of coming together and praying and finding that path together, and finding the support for the dad too. Dave came with me to an IHM conference, the homeschool conference, which sadly I think has stopped since COVID. And I've heard that hopefully they're going to bring it back around, but the Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Conference, and there are other conferences out there, but he came with me to that conference and heard some priests speak of the importance of homeschooling. And the first one he came to with me, we left there and he said, I'm on board 100%. We're never putting them back in school.
Wow.
So they need support as well. The husbands need support as well. So, the naysayers can be anyone from a stranger to your husband. And so it's a matter of finding, the outside, we have to just kind of shut that out and not allow that to get in, because we know we're doing something that God's called us to. But when it comes to your husband, you definitely need to find that path forward together. And when you do, there will be peace there as well.
Yeah, and there's no end of choices that we make at parents that other people are going to comment on. And we're not going to do it just like them. It's not the way God made us, whether you're choosing to breastfeed or not, or breastfeed past a certain age or not, or have a family bed because the baby's colicky and needs extra attention, and everyone gets more sleep that way. I remember we had a colicky baby, and I remember my sister saying, "Get that baby out of your bed." She was freaking out at me. And this is a sister I love dearly and I'm very close, but sometimes the choices we make, because someone else has a different lens, a different life experience, different fears, they can start getting triggered at us. And we just kind of have to hold our ground and pray it through. Yes. And just remember why we do these things that we, and just keep loving those people, because they're going to have their fears and they're not going to realize how much it hurts when they share them.
That's very true. It's very true. Lots of opinions coming at us all over, right? Like you said, how many children we have, how many, staying home with our children.
Yeah, why aren't you working? Yeah.
We have 5 daughters. People are like, aren't you going to have some boys? I mean, you always get an opinion, you always receive opinions that are unsolicited. And
didn't they have boys at Costco this week? Like, hello. I know it's true. People do want to know
my control.
Why you don't have a designer family. It's hilarious.
Yes. Yeah. So we have to learn to shut those opinions out and listen to the one that matters, right?
Yeah, we want to have compassion for people because we just don't know what they're suffering internally.
Right. Exactly.
And over time, we win them over. They'll see the fruits, but it ain't going to be quick.
This is very true. I have experienced that myself with people years later saying, I just didn't know about that homeschooling, but now I really see it. When our daughter graduated and she graduated with honors and received a scholarship to a good university, they were like, wow, I didn't believe in that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But we couldn't wait around for their approval.
Exactly.
It may or may not come, but we can't wait for it.
That's right. Exactly.
Thank you, Jen. That's such a good one. Everybody, we're going to take a really quick sponsor break to hear from our wonderful folks at Homeschool Connections. We're here with Jennifer Smarsh. We're talking about 8 ways to win the battle for peace in your homeschool, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, we're back with Jennifer Smarsh. We're talking about 8 ways to win the battle for peace in your homeschool, and we've talked about 1 through 4. Would you just name the first 4 that you already covered, Jen, and then number 5?
Sure. We've talked about comparison. Am I doing enough? Not recognizing the root struggles and the opinions of family and friends.
Great. Wonderful. These are so good. I'm just resonating with everything. Okay, so take us into number 5.
All right. Number 5 is being too busy. So this is a situation that I have seen over and over. I experienced it myself. New homeschoolers tend to, because everybody's got that, are you socializing the kids question? So we tend to want to take on everything. We have to socialize the kids. We have to be busy. We don't want our kids isolated. People think we're living in a bubble. We are not living in a bubble, by the way, but we are, as new homeschoolers, we tend to make all these efforts to socialize them, not live in a bubble, not keep them at home alone. And so we tend to spread ourselves really thin and being so busy that we actually don't get the schoolwork done that we're supposed to get done. And so that is, why we don't want to be a box checker for every little thing. We still do need to get some work done, right? We are homeschooling them to do school, right? So while I've even said education is happening all over, you do have to kind of answer to the school district and usually show them that some education has taken place. We have to have proof of that. So we need to make sure that we have time to actually do the work. So, again, it's a trap that everybody falls into, and we have to scale back. We also, in the comparison thing, right? Are we doing enough? Because our friends, I'm 53. I'm in a different season in life. I watch my friends who have all these young kids, 9, 10 kids, and they're running circles around me. They are busy as can be. I see a few things on the calendar in a week, and I'm like, I need white space. It's too much running. I can't do it. But we have to look at, first of all, why are we busying ourselves? Are we doing it for the right reasons? Because we do need community. If community is important, we absolutely need community. Children need friends. It's not good to isolate them. However, are we doing it for that purpose of enriching their education and, giving them avenues for friendship and to grow socially? Or are we doing it because, this is a really hard question that we have to ask ourselves. Are we busying ourselves that much because it's what our friends are doing? It's because we think that other people feel that we should be busying ourselves more. And that is going to get us nowhere fast. That is just a really a significant concern and will rob you of your peace really fast, because then you're just burned out. You're frazzled. You don't feel like you can even do the schoolwork. You're exhausted, but you feel like you need to keep going and putting on this air or this show of like, I'm doing the things, And I just want moms to know we don't have to do all the things. You don't have to do all the things, finding balance again. It always tends to go back to finding balance, doesn't it? But we don't need to do too much. We need to do some things. We don't want to be isolated. We want to be social. We need community. But when we're running around, exhausting ourselves, and then we're no good for, our husband and our children because we're trying to keep up with everybody else, we won't have any peace doing that. So again, this can be a season of life thing. We're going to be busier in some seasons. And, as I said, at my age now, I have far less energy than I had 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I was complaining that I didn't have the energy I had 10 years previous, so just different seasons of life. And, when there's a baby, we need to lay low for a while. And, I've already said all of that. But the bottom line is we need to figure out what works for our family, what works for you as the mom. Some moms are very introverted. It's really painful for them to go be really busy, but they need to find some balance in that because children, they may have children who aren't introverted and they need to go and have some time with other kids. But we need to be okay with who we are. And again, this goes back to connecting to our source, right? Who will let us know who we are, and to accept who we are and accept that it's okay to be as busy as you need to be, or to scale back if that's not you. And even if your friends are running circles around you, that's okay, because that might work for them. Some families thrive in busy, other families thrive in quiet. And so it's a matter of finding where that is for you and just accepting that and embracing it and being okay with that. That's just being okay with who God made you to be.
Yeah. And if I may, we live in a very highly distracted culture that needs to be constantly diverted and entertained. And our kids need to be okay with some silence, with some quiet, with some time to be bored even, because innovation and creativity and brand new things come out of empty spaces like that. Because of our faith, that space is filled up with the presence of God. And we need to trust that too. I love what you said though, too. We don't want to burn ourselves out, and then we got nothing left.
Right. We had neighbors in almost every neighborhood we've lived in. The kids in the neighborhood who went to school, they would get off the bus and they were running activity to activity, and they'd want to play with my daughters. And there were children in every community that asked me, can you homeschool me? Because they didn't want the busy, and they wanted time to play. They didn't want to be running from activity to activity. And again, that's not across the board. Some people thrive in that, but there are some who just really don't want to be that busy. And we're barraged too as moms. The phone is dinging, and, people are texting and calling. And so there's busyness on that level as well. And it's okay to set that aside and say, unless it's an emergency, I am unable to communicate with you via text right now or have a phone call right now. I'll get to it later. But right now, school is a priority. And so that's another form of busyness that I don't think we even are aware of at times,
Yeah, there's an authenticity to everything that you're talking about, Jen. And thank you for that. I really love that, getting to know ourselves and who we are in Christ is really at the root of all this, and not to get caught up, not to be, as St. Paul says, tossed about by every wave of change or every new idea. Everything that's right for somebody else isn't necessarily right for us. And that's
Exactly. It goes back to that comparison, doesn't it?
Sure does. It all
works for one, does not work for another.
Yeah. So what's the next one?
Okay, so the next one is lack of time to prepare and plan. So some moms find that the open and go curriculum is what they need. They open it up, they do what it says to do, and they move on. And that works just fine. For my children, we have had some issues where we discovered, as I mentioned earlier, we need hands-on activities. So I needed to spend a lot of time preparing and planning. And, we found these great history things online, the history pockets, and, different things that, it takes time to print those activities and get them cut out for her, and, doing things like that. And she needed lots of different, picture books. And so it would take time to create those book lists and really find those resources that would work. Where are some day trips we could take for, little field trips to connect with what we're learning about? What are some educational movies we can watch? That takes time. And it also takes time to grade. Oh my goodness. We need to allow time for those things. Teachers in school get teacher planning days. So we need to allow those times for ourselves as well. Falling behind in grading. Oh my goodness, my poor girls. If I fell behind in grading, weeks later, I'm showing them things they've gotten wrong and they're way beyond that concept. So now we're in trouble, right? So those things are important and they're valuable. We need to take time for those things. And so if your husband cannot help you with that time, or a family member or friend can't, I assume that most people will be able to get some help with the kids so that you can have a little bit of time now and then. I'm thinking, I don't know, you have to find out what works for you, but maybe once a month, every 6 weeks, even every 2 months, just having a check-in now and then to just prepare and plan. And, if you can't find the outside help, some things that have worked for me, or having the children do an independent day if they're old enough, give them their work, set them aside, and I'm right here, I'm right here if you need me, but I really need to focus on doing some planning and prepping and printing and grading work. And that works for older children. If you have young ones, that's going to be more challenging, but maybe some educational movies can be on so you can call it a school day. If you're afraid to veer off of having a school day, some educational games that they can play together. Older ones can read to younger ones and teach them school. That's a really fun thing. The older kids want an opportunity to have a break from their education and teach the younger ones. So you can have a day where an older child will help the younger ones, and, just get some of that done, but work that in. It's important to have time, because if we're prepared, we feel more peaceful. If we feel frazzled, we don't feel peace, right?
Great.
So,
okay. That's so good. Time for planning. Set it aside.
That's right.
Intentional. What's next?
The next thing we need to allow time for is breaks. There's value in a day off. And I think that the calendar lends itself nicely to this. In October, we have Columbus Day. Make it a 3-day weekend. Have a day off. Thanksgiving is in November, Christmas. Then, the other holidays that are typically the public schools have off, right? Martin Luther King or President's Day. Take those days as well and just have something to look forward to. I think that we do better when we know we have a break in sight. If there's no break in sight, we're just surviving until Christmas break, and then we're surviving to Easter, and then we're surviving until summer. We shouldn't be surviving. We shouldn't be just surviving. We need to allow time to do those things that will recharge the batteries, and, spend time with the kids in a fun way too. And so a day off can be cozy up if it's winter and play games or watch a movie or go do an adventurous thing, do whatever that is that's going to recharge your battery. So there's value in a day off, and there's nothing wrong with taking one. We have the whole year to do, the schooling. So we really can take a day now and then and renew ourselves.
Yeah, so good. God rested. We need to rest.
That's right. Exactly. And then the last one is the question of, do I have what it takes? And the short answer is, of course you do. The Catechism reminds us that we're our children's first educators, right? We as the parents are our children's first educators. The Catechism tells us so. God chose you for your children. He chose you to be the parents of your children. He doesn't make mistakes. And I will also say this. No one on this earth knows your child as well as you know your child. You might need the outside help for tutoring or for, like the vision therapy or, something to that effect. But in the day-to-day, no one knows your child better than you. So no one can teach your child better than you. And so that should just answer the question of, do you have what it takes? We have what it takes because God's given us what we need to do that. And so we can rest assured that He's given us that. He's brought us to this journey. He'll see it through. He'll see us through with it.
Amen.
So,
Amen. This is a great adventure. And if anyone's a fan of The Hobbit, adventures are uncomfortable. But boy, we find out who we are. We find out who God is in those adventures.
Right.
Jen Smarsh, thank you so much. This has been incredibly rich. And I really hope that it ignites a lot of conversations between homeschooling parents and grandparents and their friends. Everybody, you can find Jennifer Smarsh. You can reach out to her by email. Put podcast in the subject line so she knows what it's about, and email her at byhisgracejs@gmail.com. And you can also find her on Facebook, JEN.Smarsh, SMARSH. And Jennifer, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening. It's been just such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for making the time today, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We're praying for you. Please pray for us too. God bless you. And And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.